We're looking back and looking forward on the National Guard's extraordinary year. That's this week on Nevada Week.
Support for Nevada Week is provided by Senator William H. Hernstadt and additional supporting sponsors.
2020 has broken many statewide records, and you can add the largest and longest National Guard deployment to that list. Not only serving a very critical role in Nevada's COVID-19 response, our National Guard members have helped law enforcement through recent racial injustice protests and been deployed to serve many missions domestically and internationally. Now, unlike active duty military, the Guard is made up of civilians, Nevadans who leave their regular day jobs and their night jobs to complete their National Guard duties. In addition to the record-setting deployment, Nevada's National Guard has broken new ground in many areas. We'll discuss these on today's show and also learn more about the Guard's work here and abroad. Finally, we'll discuss what 2021 and beyond might look like for Nevada's National Guard. Now, to accomplish all of this, we are very honored to welcome Major General Ondra Berry, Adjutant General for the Nevada National Guard; Command Sergeant Major Shauna Reese, 757th Combat Sustainment Support for the Nevada Army National Guard; Second Lieutenant Katrina Schumacher of the Army National Guard; and State Senator Pat Spearman. Well, thank you so much for joining us. There is so much that we want to cover, and so I want to get right to it. And Major General Berry, I wanted to go to you first. Such an unprecedented year for Nevada's National Guard. And when you're reflecting upon that year, what really stands out to you? And maybe talk about some things that really exemplify what the Guard's mission is.
Well, first of all, thank you. I always appreciate the fact that when I get a chance to talk to an audience, citizens, about what the Guard is all about. The Guard has three main roles. Number one is to fight and win our nation's wars. So when you see the Guard deploying to Afghanistan, Iraq, Poland, Africa, that's our main mission. But also the Guard protects the homeland. So when you hear about working a pandemic or working civil unrest or fires or floods, things like that, that's the what we call our domestic operations mission. Then the third thing that the Guard does is what we call our state partnerships. And the Nevada National Guard has two state partnerships with Tonga and Fiji. And so when you fold all three of those, and keep in mind that 3/4 of your Guards members are what we call traditional or M-days, which means they have other professions outside of the Guard, then you ask a lot of your National Guard. And this year has been unprecedented because in addition to what we just talked about, we had the historic, pandemic, which is still going on. And we have more of our Guardsmen that were activated this year, over 1,100, which we've never had before. And we're still doing all these missions that we had units deploying overseas. We had the pandemic, we had civil unrest, and how we were handling emergencies. And so that's just the expectation and what the Guard does. And we always say the National Guard, always ready, always there, neighbors helping neighbors. And our mission is unique. And so when you see a Guardsman, when you sometimes you just don't understand the fact that not only do they do all these missions, but they're also balancing family, they're going to school, they're living in your neighborhoods. And so, but we love what we do, and the uniqueness of the Guard is what makes us what we are as a nation today.
Major General, let's talk a little bit about the COVID response here. And of course, we're seeing a current spike. I know the Guard is very much involved in doing a lot of the testing statewide, has been very instrumental in a lot of the testing outfits in some of our rural communities, and of course, has done a lot of work here in Southern Nevada in our metro area as well. As we transition now, of course, everybody's talking about vaccine distribution now. How important, how integral is the Guard going to be to that distribution and administration of vaccines?
So at this time, we're only in what we call preparation mode. Until the governor asks for assistance, we will not get involved in the vaccine distribution. But when if the governor does ask, we are more than prepared and qualified, whether it be the logistics, the distribution, or helping to administer. And so at this time, today, we have not been asked to do that mission, but we are prepared just in case. There's many states around the nation right now that are using the National Guard. We're kind of looking at their models, and we just have a feeling there may be a time where the governor will tap us on the shoulder. So we're ready just in case, but as of today, we have not been asked.
Sergeant Major Reese, I wanted to come to you. Major General talked about the international deployment, so let's go to that. You are one of the soldiers that was deployed to Eastern Europe as part of Operation Atlantic Resolve. And again, I want to come back to my original question. As you reflect over the last year, as you've been deployed, and maybe we narrow this a little bit more to what personifies a National Guard member, what kind of characteristics or traits do you see across all that you've been working with as you've been deployed in Eastern Europe?
Well, I would say definitely the standards and discipline was the key to our success over where we were, and just making that adjustment as quickly as we could. I think we were challenged with resources a little bit, but the soldiers were ready to jump right in and make those adjustments to clean. We had to stop our normal processes and spend 2 to 3 hours deep cleaning everywhere we were.
Yeah, you know, it's exactly. I mean, you started, I would assume, right about the time that you probably got to Eastern Europe, got to Poland. The COVID-19 starts, you know, and we see the spread at that point. And of course, that must have changed a lot, as you mentioned, of what protocols have been. Did it change your mission at all? Were you still able to do what you set out to do by being in Eastern Europe?
So when we went over there initially, we were moving very fast. Everything was going as planned. When COVID happened, everything came to a halt, but then it slowly picked up. And I would say within 2 weeks, we were probably back up to operation, but just not to the extent where we were when we first got there. So it was making those adjustments.
Major General, I wanted to come back to what you talked about early on, and the citizen soldier. Of course, the Guard slogan, 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year. It sounds like that the Guard does a lot more than that. Is that slogan outdated now?
That slogan has been outdated for a long time. If you go back to 9/11, when we first had a large activation, our ops tempo, our readiness, our expectations has just been very, very high. You cannot be as efficient as you need to be in today's military, especially in the National Guard, if you're not in a capability or capacity of readiness. And to ensure that we have that, we have to really surge in terms of our training, in terms of our qualifications. And if you throw in the pandemic right now, where we've had to do some virtual drills, it just causes us to really look at how to be more innovative. But the days of 1 week in a month or 2 weeks out of the year, that's just kind of an anomaly right now. There are times you can do reduced training time in terms of time that you have to be in with our units, but it's just too much of an ask. And you also have to keep this in mind, and here's the most important thing, is that if you look at Sergeant Major Reese in terms of the ability to go to Poland and take a group of soldiers over there, and they have to be able to do the same mission as active duty, and they have to be able to accomplish that in less amount of time. That lets you know what's expected of a soldier or airman in the National Guard. And so when they go over there, they don't say that we didn't have enough time or we couldn't prepare. They have to do whatever it takes to get our personnel ready. And it's just kind of hard to do that 1 week in a month and 2 weeks out of the year. So that's probably how it used to be. But with what we're asked to do globally, and then what we're asked to do domestically, that's almost impossible.
Great point. And Lieutenant Schumacher, I have to go to you. Major General Barry's talking about the training that is involved here. And of course, I think you probably exemplify this, being that you are the first female tanker in state history. And by female tanker, I hope I have this right, first to operate a tank and lead your own platoon, 16 soldiers, 4 tanks. First off, do I have that correct?
Yes, you do.
So the training involved, and again, back to my original question here, is you're reflecting upon your year. And let's talk a little bit more about diversity here and gender equity in the Guard itself. What really stands out to you?
Honestly, I went into CAV very skeptical and a little bit nervous. I knew that I wanted to be on tanks. I absolutely love them. The first drill that I got to step on them. But I also knew that I was leading the way for women in combat arms for the state of Nevada. So I went in with it, hopeful, and I actually got received with open arms. I have the best soldiers, hands down. And I've definitely been lucky to have women like Captain 2K and Captain Grule, who both were in CAV before me in our FSC and have been super supportive and helpful in helping me pave that way and knowing that I don't have to do it completely alone. And now we have our first female scout who actually graduated in October from 19 Delta School. So she'll be joining us here shortly. And I'm really excited for the career she has in front of her.
I have a quote from you. You said it's like the domino effect. Once you get one domino in motion, everything else is going to fall as well. I think we'll definitely start to see a lot more females in cavalry in the next few years. Again, as we're looking at the future here, we're looking into 2021 and the years beyond that, what do you think really needs to happen to make sure that we're able to continue the groundbreaking that you've done here?
I think we definitely need to support all of our soldiers, not just women, a lot of males too. Asking any soldier to go into CAV, to be a tanker, to be a scout, you're doing a lot of training and it is hard. It's not an easy task for anyone, regardless of your gender. And I think continuing to build that family, that support system that we have in the CAV right now is going to be absolutely incredible for our future. The mentorship that we've implemented throughout the entire squadron has been monumental. And I think a lot of that has to do with the leadership we've had with Major General Barry and Colonel Chavez, definitely helping to support all of our soldiers.
Senator Spearman, I want to go to you. Let's talk a little bit about state lawmaking and policy here. You've been instrumental and led a lot of policy and lawmaking related to not only the National Guard, but other branches of the military and veteran services as well. When you're reflecting, again, from that lens of maybe state legislation here, looking in on what the National Guard has accomplished over the last year, what really stands out to you? And maybe give us a little bit of perspective on how the National Guard, through your lens, is evolving and growing.
So first of all, let me say thank you again for inviting me. It's really an honor to be a part of such a distinguished panel. So, my service in the state Senate, everything that I do, literally everything that I do, I have to look at it through a soldier's eyes because I spent so much time as a soldier. And Lieutenant Hua, First Tank Commander, pretty good. Pretty good. So I look at it through this lens. I have an opportunity. I have a very unique opportunity to take the experience that I had on active duty, and I even spent some time in the reserves. I have a unique experience to take that opportunity to take that experience and see what are we doing right? Where are we doing right? And what do we need to change? And so take, for example, the legislation that I passed that required the Department of Veteran Services to develop a program of outreach to soldiers, airmen, to military members who were discharged under Don't Ask, Don't Tell. One of the things that a lot of people didn't realize is that it depended upon how homophobic your chain of command was as to whether or not you got a bad conduct, a dishonorable, or something less than honorable. And so in doing so, what you did when you were discharged with less than honorable, you had no benefits. You had no benefits for GI, you had no benefits for to get a home loan, you had no benefits for education, nothing. And I just thought that that was wrong. And especially since Don't Ask, Don't Tell had been repealed, I didn't think that those discharged members, military members, should be continue paying for a mistake actually that we made because we would not include diversity and multiculturalism. So that was one of the ones. The other one that I've had an opportunity to work on, and is very near and dear to my, is to make sure that our state is doing all that we can to find and fund resources for military sexual trauma. And I think what has happened at Fort Hood, Texas, brings to light one of the very dark secrets of the military that for far too long Many have felt the need to cover up. And what I say to them, when you see wrong like that, they don't deserve your loyalty. And quite frankly, they don't deserve to wear the uniform. When we see people who are obviously wrong and they're harassing someone based upon their gender or even their gender presentation, they do not deserve our loyalty and our honor. And there are Nevadans, mostly women, but some men that I've spoken to. For them, the trauma of sexual assault is so heavy. Many of them don't think they'll ever get their lives back. And I just believe that we have responsibility to them, especially to the members of the Guard and Reserve. We have responsibility to them to make sure that we have things in place that will help them,
Senator,
so there are things that I could talk about, but
Senator, I'm sorry, if I could jump in really quick. We're talking about state legislation. Of course, we have the 81st session that is coming up really in a matter of months. You spoke to the Don't Ask, Don't Tell and some of the provisions provided retroactively to those that might have been dishonorably discharged. Do you think there might be similar legislation we might be able to at least introduce and get through in our legislative session that's coming up here?
I think, because I'm still looking, today is the last day and I've got a couple of calls with some people. I'm still looking because I usually like to sponsor at least 2 bills every session that will help the military. And so there's another one that I'm working on. I won't talk about it right now, but there's another one that I'm working on that I hope will help our military. I want to go back to something that General Barry said in terms of 2 weeks, a week and a month and 2 weeks a year. I was at the Pentagon from 03 to 06. And on the personnel desk of the Operations Center, it was my job to continue to look at all of our units and make sure that they were fully ready in terms of personnel, and if not, to make sure that we had people to reconstitute immediately, especially going into theater, going into to Iraq, because that's where most of our casualties at that time were happening. So one of the things I'd like to get across to the people who are looking and listening at this is that members of the National Guard and members of the reserves, that's whether it's Army, Air Force, Marines, those categories are people who are our neighbors. They are people that we sing in the choir with. They are people that we go to happy hour with. They are people. And what happens when they are called to duty? They are called to duty. They're called to take off that civilian attire and to put on the military uniform. And from that point on, they are committed. They are committed not just to the mission, but as General Barry says, they are committed to making sure that they do the very best. Let me say this one thing and then I'll stop. It has not been since the War for Independence that we have used our reserve forces as much. Since 9/11, our reserve forces, National Guard and reservists, have been 2/3 of the fighting force. And I hope that everyone recognizes that and remembers that and makes sure we're doing everything that we can to make their lives better, on or off duty.
A great point. I'm glad you acknowledged that. I want to come back to the citizen soldier piece of this, because we did have an opportunity. Our producer, Heather Caputo, went out and talked to a very unique, very special citizen soldier about her role specifically with COVID-19 response. Let's take a look at that.
As 2020 draws to a welcome close, Las Vegas, like the rest of the U.S., is struggling. COVID-19 emptied businesses. It filled our lives with rules and doubt. The pandemic has transformed parents into teachers, friends into caretakers, and regular people into heroes.
My name is Sparkle McQuiston, and I am a lieutenant in the Air National Guard. I am an infectious disease nurse practitioner, and I live in Las Vegas, Nevada.
As a teen, Sparkle McQuiston carefully crafted her future plans, and the National Guard wasn't initially on the blueprint of her life.
I did not know what the National Guard was. Like most people, I had no idea it was the military. When I listened to everything he said, it sounded like an amazing volunteer opportunity. So I went down with him to the office, and I walk in and I'm looking around and I'm confused, and I'm asking him, why is everybody in uniform? And he said, it's the military, Army National Guard. I sat down and I talked to the recruiters, and after them explaining everything and what it's about and how amazing, I couldn't turn it down. And it was the best thing I ever did. The National Guard shaped my success in many ways. When I first joined the Army, I was a combat medic. I got experience that I will never get in the civilian world. And once I gained so much experience, I went back to school, became a nurse, and then eventually nurse practitioner. A lot of people seem to be afraid of the National Guard, and I think it's because they don't know what it is. So I would like them to know that we're civilians too. Majority of our time is spent as a civilian. We're only in the National Guard and in uniform at least once a month, but when national disasters happen or when we're needed, we're on standby. So we're your family, we're your neighbors, we're your co-workers. We're here to help. When we're activated, that means we're there to help.
McQuiston, who's slated to be promoted to captain next month, has served 8 years in the National Guard and plans to serve 12 more. For Nevada Week, I'm Heather Caputo.
Let's move the conversation into what Sparkle said there, that she wasn't very aware of what the National Guard was and what it did. And Lieutenant Schumacher, let's go to you first. If you have a recruit potentially that has come up to you and said, what are the benefits here, what would you tell them?
I mean, the one thing that we definitely get to highlight here in Nevada is we're one of the few states that gets to offer the 100% Nevada tuition cost covered. We also get our books paid for as well, and you as well get to have the amazing opportunity to join an amazing force and develop some friendships and relationships that you wouldn't have otherwise. The relationships that you get to build in the National Guard are unlike any other you'll ever be able to have.
Sergeant Major Reese, let's talk about the neighbors here. If I was your neighbor and I came to you and maybe I asked just how can I best support the Nevada National Guard, what would you tell me?
Well, I would say I have people come up to me all the time. I see them come up to us and thank us all the time for our service. And that's all it is. And my response is generally the same to them. It's like, no, my pleasure, because I'm there for them. We're all there for them, for the community.
Major General Barry, you talked a little bit about this at the beginning of the show. Let's go back to this. If you're talking to an employer is asking, what assets does a Guard member bring to any type of job, what would you tell them?
First of all, let me tell you, you will get somebody that is going to be trained as a leader. And I believe those are transferable skills into the workplace. Also, you'll get somebody who understands structure, who understands discipline, who loves their country, who's patriotic, who's been a part of a team, who has a proven track record of success, who knows how to problem solve, who knows how to critically think. And those are just such great transferable skills. And so if you get someone who has been a member of the military, you get a value-added individual. I go back to, I was listening to the senator talk just now, and I will promise you the skills she has as a senator are transferable from the military, and she has used those to launch where she's at. And so you're going to get somebody who's just better and who's more committed and who's caring. And again, I'll say this, and those are very good transferable skills. And so if you want to value add somebody that can make a contribution to help drive in your mission and being aligned to being a better person and who has a love for this nation, that's a member of the military.
And I want you to just address the flip side here. If you have an employer that assumes that it's a liability to be in the National Guard just because there is maybe so much time, or the assumption might be so much time away from the workplace, what would you tell them?
Well, you can't have the longest running democracy in the history of the world without making some sacrifices. And the nation that we are today is one of the reasons is because of our military. And yes, it is a sacrifice. And I'm sensitive to the fact if you may have a small business that, losing someone for a period of time may be a challenge, but that's the sacrifice it takes in order for us to maintain what we have here. It's what separates us apart from many parts of this world, is being able to have the less than 1% of our population that can be counted on to protect not just us globally, but also us domestically. Anytime you see an airplane or a helicopter or somebody in this uniform, you got to think they're protecting. Freedom isn't free, and there's a cost to it. So if we want to maintain the quality of life that we have, know that there is a cost to it. And again, I'm sensitive to that there is it may be a burden or hardship on an organization or a business, but know that we're less than 1% of the population. And these are people who are volunteered and who have sworn to uphold the Constitution.
And Senator, we got about a minute left. I want to ask you, we're going to employ some of those skills that Major General Barry just mentioned right there. upcoming legislative session, if you've got one of your fellow legislators that's on the fence and maybe supporting a bill right here, what are you going to tell them? What are you going to tell them that can kind of move them the other way of why the National Guard is so important to our state?
I've had that to happen, so that's a very real situation. And my approach is this. I look them squarely in the eye and I say, we are the land of the free because we are the home of the brave. Get with it. People are willing to lay down their lives, and you can't see the benefit of this legislation. So don't come to me with a yellow ribbon. Don't come to me talking about we appreciate our military. Don't do any of that, because this bill is an opportunity for you to manifest your support for the military. So most people know that it is an unwise choice to say anything against a bill that will help legislators, at least to say that to my face. Most people know that that is a very unwise choice.
Well, thank you so much. We are out of time. We really appreciate all the perspective, all the context that you've given our show today. Thank you so much. Well, thank you, as always, for joining us this week for Nevada Week. For any of the resources that we've discussed on today's show, please visit our website at vegaspbs.org/Nevada-week. You can also find us on social media at Nevada Week. Thanks again, and have a happy holidays.